Quit the entrepreneur charade, my sister blurted at the family dinner. Your online hobby isn't true business. All of them laughed. I nodded gently. Noted. That Monday, I emailed my investment firm. Pulled a $150 million from Sarah's tech startup. An urgent board meeting was convened. The chilled crystal of the wine glass seemed to hum against my fingertips, suspended just inches from my lips as Olivia's voice, sharp and dismissive, sliced through the comfortable hum of my parents' dining room. In that singular, searing moment, the very air around me thickened, growing heavy with unspoken judgments. My older sister had always possessed this uncanny ability to command attention, to make every ear in the room tilt her way, and this time was no different. "Stop playing pretend entrepreneur," she'd said, her eyes, usually warm for family, now pinning me with that familiar, condescending glint I'd known since childhood. "Your little online thing isn't real business." I felt Dad's fork clink against his plate, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor in the festive table. Mom shifted, the rustle of her dress a testament to her discomfort. Across the table, Michael, Olivia's husband, snorted into his napkin, a sound that wound a knot tighter in my stomach, pulling me taut. "I mean, come on," Olivia continued, her voice gaining momentum. "You sit at home in pajamas clicking on a computer. Real business people wear suits. They have offices. They have employees you can actually see." Michael, ever her enthusiastic cheerleader, nodded vigorously, his eyes gleaming with approval. "Olivia just closed a deal with Meridian Properties," he interjected, puffing out his chest. $43 million. That's real business. Michael, with his commercial real estate firm, his Tesla, and his expensive suits, was the picture of conventional success. Olivia, at the helm of her tech startup, Next Gen Solutions, was making genuine waves. Their life, a gleaming glass and steel house in the suburbs complete with a pool and a 3-car garage, was a stark contrast to my modest downtown apartment, where I worked from a laptop, perpetually in motion. "How much did you make this year?" Olivia asked, her tone dripping with a saccharine-sweet concern that felt like acid on my tongue. "From your online thing?" The entire table seemed to hold its breath. Mom looked as if she wished the floor would swallow her whole. Dad cleared his throat, a deep rumble, but remained silent. My younger cousin, Chloe, let out a nervous, almost imperceptible giggle. "I do all right," I heard myself say, my voice a quiet ripple against the expectant silence. "All right," Olivia repeated, the words rolling off her tongue as if they were tainted, something infectious. "You're 32 years old. Mom told me you still have student loans. Meanwhile, I'm expanding to 3 new markets next quarter. We just hired 15 new developers." Mom began, "Olivia, please," but my sister waved her off with a dismissive hand. "No, Mom. Someone needs to say it. She needs to hear this. You're not helping her by pretending her little side hustle is equivalent to what Michael and I do. It's not the same thing." Michael leaned back, a smug smirk playing on his lips. "What's your revenue? Do you even have revenue?" My gaze dropped to my plate. The salmon, which Mom had prepared so lovingly, suddenly seemed utterly unappetizing. And here's the thing about those moments, the ones where you're cornered by people who claim to love you but actively diminish you. The shame isn't just for what they perceive, but for the truth you hold back, the validation you crave yet refuse to give. "See," Olivia declared triumphantly, her voice cutting through the tension. "She can't even answer." "That's because there's nothing to answer. Playing around on the internet isn't building a business. It's a hobby that might make you a few $100 a month if you're lucky." The entire table, a tableau of uncomfortable family faces, was now staring at me. Aunt Susan, Uncle Robert, my 3 cousins, all of them waiting to see what I'd say. I folded my napkin carefully, deliberately, and placed it beside my plate with a quiet precision that belied the storm brewing within me. "Understood," I said, the single word hanging in the air. Olivia blinked. "What?" she asked, thrown off by my unexpected composure. "I understand what you're saying. You're right. I should probably think about getting a real job." The satisfaction that bloomed across her face, a grotesque blossoming, made my stomach clench, turning over sourly. "Finally, some sense," she said, practically preening. Michael actually mentioned his company might need an administrative assistant. It wouldn't be glamorous, but it would be steady income, real income. That's very generous, I said, rising slowly from my seat. Thank you for dinner, Mom. It was delicious. I should go. Mom looked utterly distressed, her hand reaching out for me. Honey, you don't have to leave. But I was already moving. I have work tomorrow. Early morning. I kissed her cheek, the scent of her perfume a brief comfort, and grabbed my coat. Olivia called after me as I headed for the door, her voice a condescending echo. Think about what I said. It's never too late to join the real world. I drove home in a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I felt absolutely nothing, which was somehow worse than feeling angry or hurt. The numbness settled over me like a heavy, suffocating blanket. My apartment was quiet when I got back. I made tea, the ritual a small anchor, and sat at my desk, staring at the 3 monitors that dominated my workspace. The little online thing Olivia had mocked so thoroughly. But what Olivia didn't know, what I'd never told my family, was that my little online thing was actually Crimson Capital, a venture capital firm I'd built from scratch over the past 8 years. And the real truth? This was only the beginning of a reckoning I hadn't known I was capable of. I'd started Crimson Capital small, investing my own money from a software patent I'd sold when I was 24. That patent had netted me $12 million, a sum that felt surreal at the time, and I'd used it to build something real, something very real. Crimson Capital now managed assets worth $890 million. We had silent stakes in 43 companies across tech, healthcare, and renewable energy sectors. I kept my name off everything, a deliberate choice. My partners were the front-facing executives who handled the public side, while I operated in the background, analyzing deals and making investment decisions, preferring the quiet power of the unseen hand. Here's a crucial psychological insight. Often, individuals who achieve immense success often find themselves needing to distance from family or social validation. This isn't about shame, but rather about creating a clear boundary to protect their often unconventional methods and avoid the kind of microjudgments that can erode confidence or distract from their focused vision. For me, maintaining anonymity was both a shield and a source of objective strength. And one of those 43 companies was NextGen Solutions, Olivia's tech startup. She had no idea. When NextGen had been seeking Series B funding 2 years ago, my team had presented the opportunity. The app development platform showed promise. The numbers looked solid. I'd approved a $150 million investment that gave Crimson Capital a 38% stake in the company. Olivia thought her funding had come from a consortium of investors she'd never met. She'd signed the papers, celebrated with champagne, and never bothered to dig into the actual ownership structure, probably too caught up in the glow of her perceived triumph. Michael had been so proud, bragging to everyone about how his wife had attracted major Boston tech money. That major Boston tech money was sitting in her apartment drinking tea and staring at investment portfolios. I opened my laptop, the cool metal a familiar weight, and pulled up the NextGen files. The company was doing well enough. Revenue was up. User acquisition was steady. They were burning through cash at a reasonable rate for a company their size. The deal to expand into 3 new markets that Olivia had mentioned at dinner was solid planning. But Crimson Capital owned 38%. And according to the shareholder agreement, any investor with more than 35% ownership had the right to call for a full board review and restructuring if they felt leadership wasn't serving the company's best interests. I'd never exercised that right. I'd let Olivia run her company the way she saw fit. My phone buzzed, a soft vibration against the polished wood of my desk. A text from Mom. I'm sorry about tonight. Olivia shouldn't have said those things. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email and started typing, the soft click of the keys a rhythmic counterpoint to the quiet fury simmering beneath my calm facade. To Daniel Hayes, Managing Partner, Crimson Capital. From Sarah Jenkins, Founder, Crimson Capital. Subject, NextGen Solutions. Immediate action required. Time sent, Sunday, 11:47 p.m. Daniel. Pull our entire position from NextGen Solutions. Effective immediately. Exercise our contractual right to call an emergency board meeting for Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. I'll be attending in person. Prepare documentation for full investment withdrawal. We're liquidating our stake. I hit send, the finality of the action reverberating through the silent apartment. Then I closed my laptop. And I went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months, the heavy blanket of numbness replaced by a steely resolve. Monday was a blur of preparation. Daniel called at 7 o'clock in the morning, his voice tight with barely suppressed stress. Are you absolutely certain about this? Once we file the notice, there's no walking it back quietly. I'm certain, I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the deep satisfaction welling within me. The board members are scrambling. Olivia called me 6 times yesterday evening. She's panicking. Good, I said. He sighed, a weary sound. I've scheduled the meeting for tomorrow morning. Everyone confirmed attendance. They know this is serious. I spent the day reviewing every document related to the next-gen investment. The shareholder agreement that Olivia had signed without reading carefully. The one where Crimson Capital was listed clearly, but nested within a complex LLC structure that obscured my personal involvement. It was legal. It was intentional. And it had worked exactly as designed, keeping my identity separate from my investments until now. Tuesday morning arrived with gray skies and a cold, biting wind that mirrored the chill in my own resolve. I dressed carefully, almost ritualistically. A navy suit impeccably tailored. A crisp white blouse. Heels that added 3 inches to my height, making me feel taller, more formidable. My hair, usually unbound, was swept up into a professional twist, secured with diamond studs in my ears, the only jewelry I wore. I looked like money, I thought, because I had money. The emergency board meeting was set for NextGen's downtown offices, the fancy space Olivia had leased in a high-rise with a sweeping view of the river. I arrived at 8:45 a.m. and took the elevator to the 16th floor. The receptionist looked startled when I walked in, her eyes wide. Can I help you? She asked, her voice faltering. I'm here for the board meeting. Conference room B. I'm sorry, but that meeting I'm aware it's closed. I cut her off, my voice even. I'm Sarah Jenkins from Crimson Capital. I called the meeting. Her eyes widened further, realizing her mistake. One moment, please. She picked up her phone and spoke in hushed, urgent tones. 30 seconds later, a man in his 50s emerged from the hallway. Mark Davis, NextGen's CFO. I'd reviewed his employment contract personally when he was hired. Miss Jenkins, he said, extending his hand, this is unexpected. We weren't aware you'd be attending personally. I don't usually attend in person, I said, shaking his hand, noting the slight tremor in his grip. But today's circumstances warrant it. He led me down the hallway to the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see people already assembled, board members I recognized from their files, 2 venture partners from other firms, and Olivia, sitting at the head of the table, looking confident and completely unprepared for what was about to unfold. I walked in. Every head turned, a synchronized movement. Olivia's eyes met mine, and a flicker of confusion, then recognition, crossed her face. Sarah, what are you doing here? I'm here for the board meeting, I said, taking a seat at the table directly across from her, settling in as if I belonged there, which, in fact, I did. This is a board meeting for NextGen Solutions. You are not, she stopped, her voice trailing off. Something in my expression must have registered, a cold fire that told her this was not a social call. What's going on? She whispered, her confidence visibly faltering. Mark Davis cleared his throat, taking his seat. Ms. Jenkins is the founding partner of Crimson Capital. Crimson Capital holds the largest minority stake in NextGen Solutions. The color drained from Olivia's face, leaving it ashen. What? Your Series B funding, I said calmly, letting the words sink in, watching her process the information. The $150 million that allowed you to expand operations, hire your development team, and lease this beautiful office space. That money came from my firm. Olivia looked as if she'd been physically slapped, a dull thud resonating in the silent room. That's not possible. The investment came from a consortium. I never saw your name on any documents. You didn't look carefully enough, I countered, my voice devoid of emotion. Crimson Capital is listed in your shareholder agreement. We structured the investment through an LLC to maintain privacy, but the documentation was clear. Page 7, Section 3, Subsection B. I opened my briefcase with a snap and pulled out a copy, sliding it across the polished table. You might want to review it. Her hands shook visibly as she picked up the document, her eyes frantically scanning the page, searching for proof that I was lying. She found my company's name instead, nested deep within the legal structure she'd signed without thorough review. This is what happens when you sign crucial documents without proper due diligence, especially in high-stakes business dealings. The assumption that everything will simply work out or that others have your best interest at heart can lead to devastating oversights, a common pitfall even for seemingly successful entrepreneurs. You've been my investor for 2 years, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You never said anything. You never asked what I actually did for a living. You were too busy explaining to everyone how I didn't have a real business. Mark Davis cleared his throat again, drawing attention back to the grim reality. Ms. Jenkins has exercised her right under the shareholder agreement to call for this emergency meeting. She's indicated an intention to liquidate Crimson Capital's full position. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, the silence now punctuated by the creak of chairs. One of them, Emily Chin from Silverton Partners, spoke up, her voice sharp with concern. A full liquidation, that's a significant move. Can you elaborate on your reasoning? I kept my eyes locked on Olivia, letting her see the full weight of my decision. I've lost confidence in current leadership. I don't believe the CEO has the judgment necessary to guide this company through its next phase of growth. That's absurd. Olivia finally found her voice, a high-pitched protest. You're doing this because I hurt your feelings at a family dinner. This is completely unprofessional. What's unprofessional, I replied, my voice chillingly calm, is dismissing someone's career without knowing anything about it. What's unprofessional is mocking your own sister at a family gathering because you assumed she was unsuccessful. But this decision has nothing to do with my feelings, Olivia. This is purely business. You can't just pull $150 million out of a company because I said something you didn't like, she cried, her voice cracking with desperation. Actually, I can. And I am. I opened my laptop again, the screen glowing, and pulled up the financial projections. NextGen has burned through $89 million of the original investment. You have $61 million remaining in operational funds. The company's valuation has grown to approximately $475 million based on your revenue growth and market position. Crimson Capital's 38% stake is currently valued at approximately $180 million. I'll be divesting that stake through a structured buyout that won't crater the company, but it will leave you scrambling for replacement funding. Emily Chin leaned forward, her expression now a blend of alarm and professional interest. Who's going to purchase that stake? Moving $180 million isn't something you do overnight. I have 3 interested buyers already lined up, I stated, a quiet confidence in my voice. They'll want board seats. They'll want voting rights. And they'll demand significant say in operational decisions. I looked pointedly at Olivia. Your autonomy as CEO is about to become much more limited. Mark Davis was typing rapidly on his tablet, his brow furrowed. If we lose Crimson's capital and bring in new investors with board seats, we'll need to restructure completely. The expansion plans would have to be delayed, possibly indefinitely. That's what happens when you build a company on someone else's money, I said, the words hanging heavy in the air. You play by their rules. Olivia's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching in her temple. You're sabotaging my company to prove a point. I'm withdrawing my investment because I don't trust your leadership, I corrected her, a subtle but critical distinction. There's a difference. I closed my laptop, the click echoing in the suddenly silent room. You spent yesterday evening explaining to our entire family that I don't understand real business. You said I'm playing pretend. You offered to get me a job as an administrative assistant. The room was dead silent. Here's what you don't understand, Olivia. While you were building one company with money you raised from investors, I was building a portfolio of 43 companies. I have stakes in everything from AI healthcare platforms to renewable energy startups. Last year, Crimson Capital's returns were 42%. My personal net worth is approximately $340 million. Olivia looked like she might be sick, her face even paler than before. So, when you talk about real business, I continued, my voice gaining strength, remember that I've been operating at a level you haven't even imagined yet. You got lucky with one successful app platform. Congratulations. I've been making calculated investment decisions that shape entire market sectors. Emily Chin was staring at me with newfound respect, her earlier concern replaced by professional awe. You're that Sarah Jenkins from the Crimson Capital that backed Nova Medical Systems and Helix Energy Solutions and Cascade Analytics, among others. Those are billion-dollar companies. They're now, I affirmed. They weren't when I invested. Olivia's hands were flat on the table, clutching the polished wood as if trying to ground herself. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let everyone think you were struggling? Because I don't need my family's validation. I don't need to prove anything to Dad or Mom or Aunt Susan or anyone else. I know what I've built. I know what I'm capable of. But you decided to humiliate me publicly, and I won't tolerate that. Not from anyone. Sarah, please, Olivia's voice cracked, raw with desperation. Don't do this. We can talk about this privately. We're past that. Daniel Hayes from my office will handle the transition details. You'll have 90 days to secure replacement funding before the buyout is finalized. I suggest you start making calls. I picked up my briefcase and walked toward the door. You're destroying everything I worked for. Olivia called after me, her voice shrill with panic. I turned back, my gaze unwavering. No, I'm removing my support from someone who doesn't respect me. You'll survive this. Your company might even thrive under new leadership. But you'll do it without my help, and you'll remember what it cost you. I left the conference room and walked past the stunned receptionist, her mouth slightly agape. The elevator doors closed on NextGen Solutions, on Olivia's shocked face, on the board members scrambling to understand what had just happened. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the lobby. Mom, Dad, Aunt Susan. I ignored all of them. The drive back to my apartment took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. I kept the radio off, preferring the stark silence to process the raw events that had just unfolded. Part of me felt utterly vindicated. The look on Olivia's face when she realized who I actually was, the sheer magnitude of her misjudgment, that moment of pure, unadulterated shock had been worth 8 years of family dinners where I'd been treated like the unsuccessful younger sister. But another part of me felt hollow, empty, like I'd just burned down a bridge I might need someday, a chilling emptiness that settled deep in my bones. I parked in my building's garage and took the elevator to the 14th floor. My apartment felt different somehow when I walked in. The same furniture, the same expansive view of the city, the same desk with 3 monitors displaying market data. But something had fundamentally shifted. My laptop pinged with an incoming email. Daniel Hayes again. Subject, NextGen situation. Media inquiries. Sarah, we're already getting calls from Tech Business Weekly and the Silicon Report asking about the NextGen divestment. I've stonewalled them for now, but this is going to be a story. How do you want me to handle it? Also, Emily Chin from Silverton Partners called. She wants to discuss potentially taking over part of our stake. She seemed very interested in working with you directly on future deals. Let me know your strategy here. I stared at the email. The business world moved fast, unforgivingly so. What had happened in that conference room an hour ago was already rippling outward, creating opportunities and problems in equal measure. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Not Mom or Dad this time. The caller ID showed a number I recognized. Kevin Miller, CEO of Cascade Analytics, one of my most successful portfolio companies. Kevin, I answered, my voice still steady. What can I do for you? Sarah? I heard through the grapevine about what happened at NextGen this morning. Is everything all right? Word traveled impossibly fast in the investment community, a silent, ravenous beast. Everything's fine. Just a routine restructuring. Pulling $150 million is routine? His voice was skeptical but not unkind, laced with an undertone of genuine concern. Look, I don't mean to pry into your business, but Cascade has benefited enormously from your guidance over the past 4 years. If there's instability at Crimson Capital, I need to know. There's no instability, I assured him, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. This was a singular situation involving personal circumstances that won't be repeated. Personal circumstances. He let those words hang in the air, weighted with unspoken meaning. I see. Well, I trust your judgment. You've never steered me wrong. But Sarah, and I'm saying this as someone who considers you a friend, not just an investor, be careful. Mixing personal and professional rarely ends well. I appreciate the concern. Good luck. And if you need to talk, I'm here. After he hung up, I sat down at my desk and opened the next-gen files again. Olivia's company was solid. The technology was sound. The team was competent. The market opportunity was real. Everything about it screamed good investment except for one factor. The CEO had publicly humiliated me. Was that enough reason to torpedo a $170 million stake? My email pinged again, this time from someone unexpected. Mark Davis, NextGen CFO. Subject: Confidential discussion request. Ms. Jenkins. I hope this message finds you well. After this morning's board meeting, I feel compelled to reach out directly. I've worked with Olivia for 18 months now. She's brilliant, driven, and has built something genuinely innovative. She's also young, sometimes arrogant, and occasionally lacks the emotional intelligence that separates good CEOs from great ones. What happened between you two is none of my business, but I have a company full of employees who depend on NextGen's success for their livelihoods. Families counting on this company to survive. I'm asking you to reconsider your decision. Not for Olivia's sake, but for theirs. If there's any possibility of finding a resolution that doesn't involve liquidating Crimson's position, I would be deeply grateful for the opportunity to discuss it respectfully. Mark Davis. I read the email 3 times, the words etching themselves into my mind. Mark was right. NextGen had a substantial workforce, depending on the company's stability. Engineers who'd probably moved across the country for this job. Recent graduates in their first positions, brimming with hope. Parents and spouses, people trying to build careers and futures. Over 140 people whose livelihoods depended on the company's stability. None of them had anything to do with what Olivia said at a family dinner. My actions would affect all of them. The realization settled over me like cold water, a shock to the system. I'd been so focused on Olivia, on my anger and hurt, that I hadn't fully considered the broader impact. Pulling my investment wouldn't just damage my sister. It would send shockwaves through an entire organization, impacting lives that were entirely innocent. I picked up my phone and called Daniel. He answered on the first ring, a testament to the lingering tension from our morning. Tell me honestly, I said without preamble. Am I making a mistake? Do you want my professional opinion or my personal one? He asked, his voice cautious. Both. Professionally, pulling out of a performing investment because of personal conflict is questionable at best. It sets a precedent that Crimson Capital makes decisions based on emotion rather than data. That's not good for our reputation. Here's the thing about power and reputation in the business world. While personal vendettas can feel satisfying in the moment, they often incur a steep reputational cost. Decisions perceived as emotional, rather than data-driven, can undermine trust among peers and future partners, signaling instability and unpredictability. It's a classic case of short-term emotional gratification versus long-term strategic consequence. And personally? I prompted, bracing myself. Personally, he said, his voice softening just a fraction, I understand why you're angry. What your sister said was cruel and dismissive. You had every right to be hurt. But Sarah, you've built something extraordinary over the past 8 years. Don't let one bad family dinner destroy what you've created. Not just Crimson Capital, but your relationship with your sister. She destroyed that relationship when she decided to humiliate me, I retorted, the old anger flaring. Did she? Or did she just make a mistake born of ignorance? His voice was gentle, a steady counterpoint to my rising indignation. I'm not defending what she said, but from what you told me, she genuinely didn't know what you do. She thought she was giving advice to someone who was struggling. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But it makes it human. People say stupid things. They make assumptions. They hurt each other without meaning to. He paused, letting his words sink in. The question is, what kind of person do you want to be? Someone who wields power like a weapon when you're hurt, or someone who uses power responsibly, even when it's hard? I closed my eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you this. After we hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon wrestling with the decision. I pulled up financial models, reviewed investment theses, analyzed market conditions. Everything I looked at confirmed that NextGen was a solid company with strong fundamentals. Everything except my wounded pride. The fallout was immediate and brutal. By Wednesday morning, word had spread through the family about what had happened. Mom called 17 times. I finally answered on the 18th call, my fingers trembling slightly. "Sarah, what have you done?" she asked, her voice strained, verging on tears. "I withdrew my investment from a company." "That's all." "That's all?" Olivia is devastated. She's been crying for hours. "Michael called your father saying you sabotaged them out of spite." "I made a business decision based on my assessment of leadership quality." "Your sister's. How could you hurt her like this?" The question made something sharp twist in my chest, a pain that was both old and new. How could she hurt me like she did in front of the whole family? "She didn't know what you actually did for work," Mom insisted, clinging to her narrative. She thought she was superior to me. She thought I was pathetic. And instead of asking questions or showing interest in my life, she decided to publicly humiliate me. My voice stayed level, a tight control over the tremor I felt. "I don't owe her my financial support, Mom. Especially not after how she treated me. But $150 million, Sarah, you're putting her entire company at risk. She'll find other investors. She has a solid product. She'll land on her feet." "Will she?" Mom's voice broke. "Your father is worried she might lose everything. Then maybe she'll learn something about making assumptions." I hung up before Mom could respond. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. Wednesday brought another wave of consequences. Olivia went to the press. An article appeared in TechPulse about internal conflict at NextGen Solutions. She didn't name me specifically, but she talked about personal conflicts with investors that were threatening the company's stability. The business community started talking, its collective murmur a powerful force. My phone, when I turned it back on, was full of messages from other portfolio companies wondering if I was unstable, if I made investment decisions based on personal grudges, if their funding was secure. I spent Tuesday afternoon on damage control calls. Kevin from Cascade Analytics wasn't the only CEO who had heard rumors. James Lee from Helix Energy Solutions wanted reassurance. Nova Medical Systems requested an emergency call with their board. Even small portfolio companies that represented less than 1% of Crimson's assets were suddenly nervous, the uncertainty spreading like a contagion. "I need you to understand something," I told James Lee, CEO of Helix Energy, my voice firm despite the gnawing anxiety. "What happened with NextGen is an isolated incident involving unique personal circumstances. Your company's funding is completely secure. Crimson Capital's investment in Helix has always been based on your technology, your team, and your market potential. Nothing about that has changed. But you pulled $150 million from a successful company over what people are saying was a family argument," James said carefully, his voice layered with thinly veiled concern. "That makes investors nervous, Sarah. It makes us wonder if our funding depends on keeping you personally happy rather than hitting our business milestones." The words stung because they were fair, landing with the brutal precision of truth. "I understand your concern," I admitted, choosing transparency over guardedness. "And I'm going to be transparent with you in a way I haven't been with most people. My sister is NextGen CEO. She didn't know I was her primary investor. The situation that unfolded was complicated by family dynamics that have nothing to do with how I evaluate business performance." There was a long silence on the line, punctuated only by the faint static. "Your sister runs NextGen?" he asked, surprise evident in his tone. "Yes. And she didn't know you were backing her company." I keep my involvement in portfolio companies confidential. Always have. It allows me to make objective decisions without personal relationships clouding my judgment. Until those personal relationships blow up in your face, James said, not unkindly. I get it now. That's a complicated situation, but it doesn't change the fact that you made an emotional decision that's affecting your reputation. Our investors are already asking questions about Crimson's stability. What do you need from me to reassure them? Fix the situation with your sister. Show the community that you can handle personal conflict without nuking business relationships, because right now the narrative is that you're vindictive and unpredictable. That's not the Sarah Jenkins I've known for 3 years. After that call ended, I sat staring at my monitors for a long time. The market data scrolled past, meaningless numbers and charts that usually brought me clarity. But clarity felt impossible to find, obscured by the storm I had unleashed. My apartment doorbell rang that evening around 7. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I checked the video intercom, I saw Michael standing in the hallway. Great, I thought, a sigh escaping my lips. This should be fun. I buzzed him up and opened the door before he could even knock. If you're here to yell at me, get it over with. He stepped inside, looking uncomfortable, almost out of place in my modest apartment. Michael rarely visited, and I suspected he'd always found it too understated, too unglamorous for his taste. I'm not here to yell, he said quietly, his voice surprisingly subdued. Olivia doesn't know I'm here. Can we talk? I gestured to the living room couch, and he sat down, looking around at my simple furniture, my minimal decorations. His eyes landed on the panoramic view of the city through the windows, the lights beginning to sparkle like scattered diamonds. Nice view, he offered, almost timidly. It's adequate. Sarah, I'm going to say something, and I need you to hear me out before you respond. He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees, his usual bluster replaced by a quiet earnestness. What Olivia said at that dinner was completely out of line. I should have stopped her. I should have defended you. Instead, I laughed along with everyone else, and I'm ashamed of that. I hadn't expected this, the raw honesty of his admission. He continued, okay, Olivia told me everything after the board meeting yesterday. About Crimson Capital, about your net worth, about how long you've been operating at this level while we all treated you like you were barely scraping by. He shook his head, a gesture of disbelief and regret. I've spent 2 years bragging about my wife's success, while you quietly built something 10 times bigger than anything I'll ever accomplish. This isn't a competition, Michael. Isn't it, though? That's what families do. We compare. We measure success against each other. And somewhere along the way, we decided you were at the bottom of that hierarchy. He met my eyes, his own filled with genuine remorse. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Why are you telling me this? Because Olivia is falling apart. She's barely sleeping. She's convinced she's going to lose the company. But more than that, she's convinced she's lost you, her sister. And watching her spiral is making me realize how badly we all failed you. I walked to the window, gazing out at the city, lights glowing in the dusk, the distant hum of traffic a melancholic soundtrack. She dismissed my entire career in front of our family. She made me feel worthless. I know. And she's going to have to live with that. But Sarah, his voice cracked slightly, a genuine note of pleading entering it, she's also your sister. The same person who used to walk you to school when you were scared. Who taught you how to drive. Who stayed up all night helping you study for your college entrance exams. I remember all of that. Then remember it means something. You two have a history that goes beyond one terrible dinner. And I'm asking you, as someone who loves her, to consider whether destroying her company is really going to make you feel better in the long run. I turned to face him. Why do you care? If NextGen fails, it hurts you too. Your wife's success reflects on you. Isn't that what you wanted? To be married to a successful CEO? He flinched, the accusation landing true. That's fair. And yes, partly I'm here because NextGen failing would be catastrophic for our family financially. But I'm also here because I've watched Olivia realize what she lost. Not the funding, though that's terrifying enough, but her relationship with you. She's been crying at random moments, staring at old photos from when you were kids, talking about how she took you for granted. Good. Maybe she should feel guilty. She does. Trust me, she does. But guilt doesn't solve anything. It just eats people alive from the inside. Michael stood up, his mission apparently complete. I'm not asking you to pretend nothing happened. I'm asking you to consider whether there's a version of this situation where you don't lose your sister permanently. After he left, I made tea and sat at my desk, the words of both Daniel and Michael swirling in my mind. Old photos. Olivia crying. Our shared history. I thought about the time Olivia stayed up all night helping me study for my college entrance exams. The way she'd threatened to fight anyone who bullied me in middle school. How she brought me soup every day for a week when I had pneumonia at 23. Before the comparison started, before the competition, before we drifted into these rigid roles of successful sister and struggling sister that had never been accurate to begin with. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Please talk to your father. He's worried about both of you. I called Dad instead of texting back. He answered immediately. Sarah, he said, relief evident in his voice, thank God. Your mother has been beside herself. I know. I'm sorry I haven't been responsive. What's going on? Olivia told us some things, but I want to hear your side of it. So, I told him everything. About Crimson Capital, about building my firm in silence, about investing in Olivia's company without her knowledge, about the dinner and what she'd said and how small she'd made me feel. Dad listened without interrupting, the silence on his end a comforting presence. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I failed you, he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. What? No, Dad, no, Sarah. I did. Your mother and I both did. We were so focused on Olivia's visible success that we never bothered to ask what you were actually doing. We assumed you were struggling because you weren't flashy about your accomplishments. We should have known better. We should have known you. My throat tightened, a lump forming. I didn't make it easy. I kept everything quiet on purpose. Because we made you feel like you had to, Dad said, his voice laced with regret. Because we created an environment where Olivia's way of doing things loud, public, progressive, was the only way we recognized success. You found a different path. And instead of celebrating that, we ignored it. I'm not blameless here. What I did to Olivia's company, what you did was react to being hurt. That's human. Maybe not the wisest business decision, but human. He sighed, a weary sound. Olivia is devastated, honey. Not just about the company, though that's part of it. She's devastated that she hurt you so badly. She called me this morning and spent an hour crying about how she destroyed your relationship. She should have thought about that before she decided to humiliate me. You're absolutely right. She should have. But people make mistakes. Stupid, hurtful mistakes. The question is whether you can find a way to forgive her, even if you can't forget what happened. After we hung up, I sat in the darkening apartment, thinking about forgiveness and revenge, and what I actually wanted from this situation. Did I want Olivia to suffer? Did I want her to lose everything she'd built? Or did I just want her to see me? Really see me, not as the little sister or the struggling entrepreneur, but as an equal, as someone worthy of respect. My laptop was still open to NextGen's financial files. I pulled up the employee roster and started reading through names and positions. Engineers who'd probably moved across the country for this job. Recent graduates in their first positions, full of naive hope. Parents and spouses and people trying to build careers. Over 140 people whose livelihoods depended on the company's stability. Daniel called Wednesday morning. We need to have a conversation. Go ahead. The other partners are concerned. What happened with NextGen is raising questions about your judgment. My judgment is fine. You pulled $150 million from a performing company because your sister insulted you at dinner. That's not fine, Sarah. That's petty. The word hit harder than I expected, a blunt force trauma. She didn't just insult me. She tried to make me feel worthless in front of my entire family. And now you've proven you have the power to destroy her career. Point made. But the cost might be her reputation. I stared at my monitors. The numbers and charts and data points that had been my whole world for 8 years. What do you want me to do? Talk to her. Work something out. Show the business community that you're not someone who lets personal feelings drive investment decisions. Even though that's exactly what I did. Even though that's exactly what you did, Daniel confirmed, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. Fix this, Sarah, or Crimson Capital's reputation is going to suffer. He was right. I hated that he was right, but he was. I drove to Olivia's house Friday evening. The glass and steel structure looked less impressive in the fading light, more vulnerable somehow. Michael answered the door. His face, initially hostile, softened slightly when he saw me. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here. I need to talk to Olivia. She doesn't want to see you. Michael, please, just let me talk to her. He stared at me for a long moment, his gaze searching, then stepped aside. Living room. Don't make this worse. Olivia was sitting on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked utterly exhausted, defeated. Hi, I said quietly, the word feeling inadequate in the loaded silence. Come to finish the job? Her voice was raw, stripped bare of its usual confidence. No, I came to talk. There's nothing to say. You made your point. I'm a terrible sister who underestimated you. You're rich and powerful and I'm an idiot. Congratulations. I sat down in the chair across from her, the cushion sighing under my weight. You're not an idiot. I didn't recognize that my own sister was the investor keeping my company alive. That makes me pretty stupid. Or it makes me very good at staying anonymous. She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Why did you hide it? Why didn't you ever tell us what you actually do? Because I didn't want this, I said, gesturing vaguely between us. I didn't want family dynamics mixed up with business. I didn't want Dad asking for investment advice or Mom worrying about risk. Were you feeling competitive? A dry, humorless chuckle escaped my lips. Well, that worked out great, didn't it? We sat in silence, the air thick with unspoken resentments and the weight of fractured history. Outside, a car drove past, its tires hissing on the wet pavement. Inside, a clock ticked somewhere in the house, marking the slow passage of moments. I spent the last week trying to find replacement funding, Olivia said finally, her voice raspy. Nobody wants to touch us. The word is out that Crimson Capital is pulling out. Other investors think there's something wrong with the company. Our valuation is dropping. 2 major clients delayed signing contracts because they're worried about our stability. I know. I've been monitoring the situation. Of course you have. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Are you happy? Did this make you feel better? No, I admitted, the word tasting like ash. It didn't. Then why did you do it? The question hung in the air between us, heavy and demanding. Why had I done it? Because I was angry. Because I was hurt. Because for one fleeting moment, I wanted Olivia to feel as small as she'd made me feel. Because you made me feel invisible, I said quietly, the truth of fragile thing I was only now articulating. My whole life you've been the successful one. The one who knew what she wanted and went after it. The one Mom and Dad were proud of. I've always been the quiet one in the background. The one nobody really noticed, Olivia. And I was okay with that. I genuinely didn't mind. I built something amazing without needing recognition from the family. But then you decided to tear me down publicly. You decided to make me look foolish and small and unsuccessful in front of everyone I care about, and I couldn't let that stand. Olivia's face crumpled, the carefully constructed facade cracking. I'm sorry, God. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was helping you by offering you a job as an administrative assistant. I thought you were struggling. Mom mentioned student loans, and I just assumed. She stopped, unable to meet my gaze. I assumed wrong about everything. You did. I was condescending and mean, and I humiliated you. You're absolutely right to be angry. I looked at her, my sister, the person who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and held me when our grandmother passed away. Before the competition and the comparison and the distance that had grown between us. I don't want to be angry anymore, I said, my voice softer than I intended. But I also don't want to be disrespected. You won't be. I promise. I'll tell the whole family what really happened. I'll make sure everyone knows how successful you are. I don't care about that. I don't need them to know. But I need you to see me as an equal, not as your little sister who needs guidance. As someone who's built something real and valuable. I do, God. I do. You've built something incredible. She looked at me with something like awe, a genuine respect replacing the old condescension. $340 million. That's insane. It's what happens when you work quietly for a long time. And I almost ruined it by running my mouth. We sat there, two sisters who'd lost sight of each other somewhere along the way, the city lights shimmering outside our quiet reconciliation. What happens to next gen? Olivia asked finally, her voice hesitant. Are you really going to liquidate your stake? I'd been thinking about this question all week. The purely business answer was clear. Pull out. Let the company find new investors. Move on. But the human answer was more complicated, intertwined with years of shared history and the sudden, raw vulnerability laid bare between us. I'll give you a choice, I said. Option 1. I sell my stake to new investors. They'll bring fresh capital, but they'll want control. You'll lose autonomy. Option 2. Crimson Capital maintains its position, but you bring in a professional COO to handle operations while you focus on product development. Someone with experience scaling companies. And you'll report quarterly directly to me. Option 2 means you'd still be involved? Her voice was barely a whisper, laced with disbelief. Yes. After everything I said? After how I treated you? Olivia's eyes filled with tears, spilling over onto her cheeks. Why would you do that? Why would you help me after what I did? Because destroying your company doesn't actually make me feel better, I admitted. The truth is stark reality. It just makes me feel cruel. And I don't want to be cruel. I want to be successful and respected, yes, but not at the cost of becoming someone I don't recognize. Sarah, I don't deserve this. No, you probably don't. But I'm offering it anyway. She stood up and crossed the space between us, pulling me into a tight hug, her body trembling against mine. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hugged her back, feeling years of distance and tension begin to ease, a quiet balm on old wounds. We'll need to rebuild trust. That's going to take time. I'll do whatever it takes. I mean it. Then prove it. Run your company well. Listen to advice. And never, ever assume you know more about someone's life than they do. Deal. The restructuring took 6 weeks. Olivia hired Jessica Cho, a veteran COO from the software industry, to handle day-to-day operations. I sat in on the interview personally, asking pointed questions about scaling strategies and team management. Jessica was impressive, competent, sharp, and utterly unintimidated by Olivia's lingering ego. Perfect. NextGen's board meetings became a regular part of my schedule. I showed up in person once a month, reviewed financials, and provided strategic input. Olivia, surprisingly, deferred to my advice more often than I expected. She was learning, slowly but surely, to see me as someone worth listening to. The family dinner that December was different. Mom, with a knowing smile, seated me next to Olivia, a deliberate choice. Dad made a toast before the meal, his voice rich with warmth. To family, he said, raising his glass. To success in all its forms. And to learning that we don't always know as much as we think we do. He looked directly at Olivia when he said it. She nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke with a newfound humility. I want to say something, Olivia announced after the toast, her voice clear and strong. The table quieted, a familiar hush descending, but this time it was filled with curiosity, not judgment. I owe everyone here, but especially Sarah, an apology. A few months ago, I said some incredibly disrespectful things about her career, things that came from my own ignorance and arrogance. She turned to me, her eyes shining with genuine remorse. Sarah is one of the most successful people I know. She's built a venture capital firm that manages close to $1 billion. She's invested in dozens of companies that are changing industries, and she did it all quietly, without needing recognition or praise from anyone. The table was silent, everyone processing this astonishing information. She's also been the primary investor in my company for 2 years, which I was too self-absorbed to realize. And when I disrespected her, she had every right to walk away. The fact that she chose to stay involved, to help me succeed despite my behavior, says everything about her character. Mom was crying softly, her handkerchief dabbing at her eyes. Dad looked proud and slightly stunned, a quiet smile playing on his lips. So, I want to say publicly that I was wrong about everything, and I'm grateful to have a sister who's not only brilliant, but also more forgiving than I deserve. The table erupted in a mixture of applause and shocked exclamations. Cousin Chloe demanded to know more about venture capital. Uncle Robert wanted investment advice. Aunt Susan couldn't stop hugging me, her embrace warm and sincere. I caught Olivia's eye across the table. She mouthed, "Thank you," and I nodded back, a silent understanding passing between us. Later, after dinner, Michael pulled me aside. "What you did for Olivia, giving her another chance. That took real character. I underestimated you too." "I'm sorry." "Apology accepted," I said, a genuine smile touching my lips. "If you're ever looking for real estate investment opportunities, I'd love to pitch you some deals." I smiled. "Send the details to my office. We'll take a look." 6 months later, NextGen closed a major partnership with a Fortune 500 company. The deal put them on the map in a significant way, transforming them from a promising startup to a serious industry player. Olivia called me the moment the contracts were signed, her voice jubilant, practically vibrating with excitement. "We did it," she exclaimed. "This is going to triple our user base." "Congratulations," I said, a warmth spreading through me. "You've earned it." "No, we've earned it," she corrected me, and I felt a pang of pride. "Jessica and I couldn't have structured this deal without your input on the strategic framework." "That's what investors do." "No," she said, her voice softer, more heartfelt. "That's what good investors do. You could have walked away and let me crash and burn. You chose differently." I looked out my apartment window at the glittering city skyline, a mosaic of light and ambition. "You're my sister. That choice was always going to be different." "I love you," she said, the words clear and true, unburdened by ego or expectation. "You know that, right?" "I love you too." After we hung up, I sat at my desk and pulled up Crimson Capital's portfolio overview. 43 companies, 15 of them approaching billion-dollar valuations. Returns that exceeded industry standards by comfortable margins. My little online thing was changing the world, one calculated investment at a time, and nobody had to know my name for it to matter. I opened my email and started reviewing the next potential deal, a biotech startup working on revolutionary cancer treatments. The science looked promising. The team had experience. The financials needed work but showed potential. I made notes, asked questions, ran projections. By morning, I'd have a decision ready. That's what real business looked like. Not corner offices or expensive suits or public recognition. Just careful analysis, calculated risks, and the patience to build something meaningful over time. Olivia had learned that lesson the hard way, but she had learned it. And somewhere in the process, we'd found our way back to each other. Not as the successful sister and the struggling sister, but as something new entirely. Do you ever wonder what profound lessons we truly learn only when someone pushes us to our absolute limit, forcing us to confront not just them, but the choices we make about who we want to be?